Hello everyone and welcome to issue number 89 of Anti-Life Reviews. I am the Tona Makaya, and we are at the end of July, which means we're at the end of Captain America month. I hope you have enjoyed listening to it as much as I have enjoyed talking about it. Today we are moving away from the baseline Captain America comic over to the Avengers, for what I think is my favorite Avengers story of all time, which ran from May to December in 1986 in Avengers issue 270 to 277, and is entitled Avengers Under Siege. Hopefully there will be no Steven Seagal in this, though. But hit that subscribe button before you join me on the journey, and let's get to it. Writers and artists on this. Writer is Roger Stern. I've talked about Roger last week, but he was a staple in the comics industry for a long, long time. Still occasionally dabbles in writing. One of my favorite things he did was the graphic novel Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, Triumph, and Torment, which I will absolutely be talking about at some point. He also helped create the Hobgoblin, my favorite Spider-Man villain, among many of his other accomplishments. Artist on this is John Buscema, one of my favorite classical artists. His runs on Conan the Barbarian, The Avengers, Thor, and Fantastic Four alone solidify his talent and importance in history. He helped define the look for a lot of those characters up until the modern day. I'm always happy to see John's name on a comic. Moving over to the story, this Avengers team is Captain America, Captain Marvel, who is Monica Rambeau, Black Knight, Hercules, Namor, and the Wasp. There are protests outside the Avengers Manor for and against the fact that Namor, the Submariner, an on-again, off-again terrorist, has joined Earth's mightiest heroes. The team has some internal debate on how to handle the protesters, but whatever reservations they had are dismissed when the crowd turns violent, spurned on by Moonstone, who has just escaped from federal prison. The Wasp and Black Knight go after Moonstone, while the others calm down the crowd, and the two captains take public questions about Namor. Moonstone is arrested, but the cops take her away are villains, the Absorbing Man and Titania, but Namor gets a double whammy of bad news. He's being sued for $2 billion, and Atuma has attacked Atlantis, so Namor wants to go alone to deal with that. Of course, the Wasp, being the chairperson, is pretty sour that Namor went off without telling her. Her and Hercules have an argument about it, causing both of them to storm off. Hercules goes mucking about town, helping some issues like an overrun truck, but also drinking and arm wrestling with sailors. Captain Marvel goes to talk to the police, finding out that there is an inordinate amount of villains who have gotten free recently, such as the Grey Gargoyle, Whirlwind, and Mr. Hyde. She then goes to talk to the Black Knight, who is testing his magical sword to find out its full properties. Screaming Mimi and Grey Gargoyle attack the Wasp, but with Black Knight's help, they best the two. And Namor calls for the Avengers' help, as Atlantis is worse off than they imagine. So the Avengers travel to Atlantis, and after many battles, they best Atuma, save Atlantis, but Namor stays behind to take care of his girlfriend, alien lady Marana, so we lose a powerful ally in the battle to come. We then meet the group who has been causing the Avengers all of these recent strifes, the Masters of Evil, which come on, a little on those there, comprising of the Wrecking Crew, Mr. Hyde, the Absorbing Man, Titania, Blackout, Moonstone, the Fixer, Tiger Shark, Goliath, and their leader, the mastermind behind everything, Baron Helmut Zemo. He wants to not just defeat the Avengers and his mortal enemy, Captain America, but humiliate them publicly. He even has a secret weapon in Blackout, who can negate Captain Marvel's powers with the Dark Force. After a small war with Moonstone over who should lead, Zemo leads his team to the Avengers Mansion, where they break in and bind Jarvis. The Masters of Evil take control of the mansion, and now they begin picking off the members one by one, with the Black Knight being taken out when he arrives by routine, Captain Marvel not long after, the Dark Force encasing her, taking out the heaviest hitter on the team. Cap and Wasp think something is not right, and Hercules is dissuaded from arriving after a night out. Little did he know he was out with the Black Mamba, who had drugged him all night. But in his rage, Hercules crashes into the mansion, going on a rampage. Cap follows and is captured, and the mansion is encased in the Dark Force. While Hercules does his best, the combined might of the Wrecking Crew, Mr. Hyde, and Goliath, along with the drugs in his system, cause me beaten into a coma. They then toss him out of the mansion through the Dark Force, where the Wasp finds him barely alive. Blackout, the person generating the Dark Dimension, is of dubious mental state, kept together emotionally by Moonstone's machinations. Zemo gloats over Cap, and record some propaganda for the media about killing the Avengers. Him and Mr. Hyde then destroy all of Captain America's personal effects, including pictures of him and Bucky, the only picture he has of his mother, and his original shield, things he can never get back. Hyde then savagely beats Jarvis for fun. At the hospital, Hercules is stable after some worry. Scott Lang's Ant-Man shows up to see if he can help, and thankfully he's there as the Absorbing Man and Titania attack the hospital, trying to kill Hercules and take out the Wasp. After some tag team work, the miniature team take out the brutes, and the Wasp swears she will avenge her friends, and that she's coming for the Masters of Evil. The military has mobilized around the Avengers mansion, and Monica manages to find an exit to the Dark Force through the Shroud, who also used the Dark Force dimension for his powers. I don't think we see him ever again either. Dr. Druid also jumps in to help after watching the news, and finally Thor arrives, and the new team is ready. The power goes out in the mansion, which causes the Black Knight to be able to call to his sword. Had been held in stasis. Him and Captain America beat Mr. Hyde until Thor arrives to finish the job. Jarvis needs medical help, but they worry about moving him, and the Avengers begin their comeback, taking out the Fixer, the Wrecking Crew, Goliath, and Moonstone. But Zemo takes out Dr. Druid and attempts to manipulate Blackout to reestablish his force field. The Masters of Evil get their second wind, too little effort, as the Avengers have regrouped and beat down the bad guys. Dr. Druid comes to his senses and uses his powers to break Zemo's hold on Blackout, but Zemo kills Blackout for defiance. The military moves in to help arrest the bad guys, and Yellow Jacket gives up. And it comes down to Captain America and Baron Zemo. Zemo blames Cap for killing his father. His father was the man who killed Bucky, by the way. Zemo wonders why he couldn't break Cap after all this. Cap says, people like him, his father, people who align with Nazis, that's madness. And it's a shame your father's madness had to live on with you. But it's over now, and after a scuffle, Zemo falls off the mansion, but he survives. The bad guys are arrested, and Jarvis is taken into medical care. In the end, Monica finds Steve Rogers sitting among the wreckage, looking at the things Zemo destroyed. Journals, baseball cards he had since a kid, tattered remains of decades. He's crying, he feels ashamed, because his friends were hurt, but the only pictures of his mother, that one stings. Monica consoles him, saying this is the way of mourning for his lost family, friends, but together they're going to build a future. So that was a pretty epic and famous story. I want to talk first about the personalities of the Avengers, the writing of them. We got here each of the Avengers getting unique personalities, and they all got time to show them. I compare these a little to like the Avengers, Brian Michael Bendis, where everyone is just quippy, snarky, and quick-witted without much else to them. They are cookie cutters there. Here, every Avenger got a little bit of something to do to show us what kind of person they are, even if they aren't a super interesting person. I mean, that isn't what you might call a classic lineup of Avengers, but I'd like to briefly go over them and what we got here. Namor was mostly a non-issue since he was really only in 2 issues, but I like the divisive nature of his inclusion. And before the Moonstone interference, people were giving real opinions about why he should be or not be on the team. We had veterans who Namor killed their friends, and other people who thought he had saved a lot of people and should be forgiven. There's a little bit to that. But beyond that, he's presented as hot-tempered, but contemplative, cold, but always thinking. It was a good presentation of Namor for what we got. The Black Knight, Dane might be the least interesting character. He's kind of generic in his own way, but he wonders about his powers. He wonders what his teammates think of him. He's presented as younger in attitude, as unsure of his place in the Avengers, but ready to help out any way he can. Kind of a white meat babyface kind of guy. Hercules, the Thor in the MCU is just Hercules here. I don't recall Thor ever acting the way he does in the MCU in the comics, because comics always had Hercules be the hard-drinking, hard-fighting, goofy, having fun, making jokes, hot-tempered guy. He hangs around in bars a lot in this, drinking, doing feats of strength. He even gets into a bar fight, almost killing a guy. Thankfully, he was one of the Wrecking Crew in disguise, and he feels bad for punching and almost getting a guy killed, though. It was kind of a strange scene. But he also has this feud with the Wasp because he doesn't want to listen to a woman. And they have this, he's a misogynistic and she's in charge kind of thing going on. And it's slightly funny. It's presented as slightly funny. The Wasp is really compelling here. I've never been a Janet fan. She definitely shows her worth here as a chairperson of the Avengers. She's sour when Namor leaves and rightfully points out that the Avengers could have easily helped Namor instead of him running off, which they then have to do anyway, so she's right. I mentioned her feud with Hercules, but also her saving him, getting him help, and her taking down the Absorbing Man, Titania, with Scott Lang. Her resolution to take down the Masters of Evil. She's a strong character that knows she's not going to be able to take out some of the heavier hitters herself, so it puts people where they need to be to do the right job. Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, used to be the least interesting Captain Marvel, and here she isn't really too much different. They did explore her powers a lot, which is kind of what they hang their hat on. Personality-wise, what can she do? What can't she do? It's not enough to make up for her being boring, but it's enough that when she's doing something, it usually helps move the plot along. She's the only one who was investigating the bad guys who kept breaking out of prison, by the way. Captain America, it's Steve's month, and this story definitely had him as the linchpin here. I'll talk about the more emotional moments shortly, but the presentation of Steve here is sort of what we kind of expect for Cap in an Avengers book. He's stalwart, he's headstrong, he's ready to take action, and action is what he does. He's consistently leading the charge, he's consistently ready to do the necessary thing to help and beat the bad guys, and he's not worried about throwing himself into the fray in any situation. This is personal for him. Zemo hates Cap. His father hated Cap. His father's the one responsible for Bucky's death and Cap being frozen, or what they thought was Bucky's death. So, of course, the final battle came down to these two, with Zemo demanding Cap kill him and Cap refusing to, knowing that he deserved justice, not death. The art, classic. It's classic Avengers art. Everyone is not only on model, but consistently looks good, especially when their powers are used. Monica in particular, since she can change her energy, there's this different line work and color in all of her when she's in water versus when she's soaring through the dark dimension. That's the kind of art you should be getting on a flagship book. High-end, good-looking, well-articulated, no excuse for anything else on the Avengers. Masters of Evil, they got a lot here too. There are, 40 goddamn villains, especially in this. But much like the Avengers, a good portion of them were given time to reflect on their personalities. Moonstone, Zemo, Mr. Hyde, and Yellow Jacket, strangely enough, being standouts. I'm not going to go over them individually because I just want to talk about Zemo. Zemo managed to bring together all of these villains under one roof to destroy the Avengers, and we range from people who lust for violence in Mr. Hyde to ones who are lifetime bad guys in the Wrecking Crew, people who don't really want to be there. But this is their life now in Yellow Jacket and the Fixer. We see him in Moonstone fighting for power over Blackout. Moonstone and this is a fight that these two would have for a long, long time, well into the Thunderbolt series, which I really like. They've been lovers and friends, but also this air of who is really in charge. Zemo is a compelling character, surprisingly complex one, and they give real hints to that here. I want to talk about a few emotional scenes to get the scenes we get, and when I think about them, the two beatings, one of Hercules and one of Jarvis, both presented as scary. Hercules had been drugged. He's furious. He's a monster, and it takes most of the Masters of Evil to take him out. But to prove a point, they shove him out of the mansion to humiliate him, to humiliate the Avengers, and to show the world, this guy's taken down. This was their first big hit, the destruction of a powerhouse, of a legend like Hercules. It made a message, and when he's close to death, it hits hard. Jarvis was a different one because only Captain America and the Black Knight watch it. The sadistic Mr. Hyde beats on the aging butler for no reason, but he thinks it's funny. Hyde is a pariah to all the other Masters of Evil, save Zemo, who seems to appreciate his lust. Cap watches in horror at what Hyde does, and the taunting by the Beast only makes it worse. Thankfully, Jarvis is able to survive this beating, and he'll be back. And of course, the Cap Locker stuff always hits really hard. You see them destroy the stuff in front of him, and he doesn't react until after the smoke had cleared, and even then he hides himself away. He feels bad that he feels bad about himself when his friends are hurt. He cries and the big one was over. The only picture he has of his mother, he says she hated having her picture taken, and she died, I believe before World War II even started, so obviously well before he became Captain America, and he just has those faded memories of her. And even though the other stuff, the baseball cards, the trinkets were his, this is the only thing that he had that really felt like he lost forever: his mother's face. It was really well done. We got told a good reason why no other teams or people besides the Reserve Avengers show up to help, and it's kind of nice to see this detail. We're told the Fantastic Four is out of the country before attacking the hospital. They send the Absorber Man to distract Spider-Man, to keep him busy for a little bit. They use the Avengers Mansion to send report to the West Coast Avengers, so they will go to Indonesia. It's nice continuity, and you always hear, well, where is everybody else? And they covered that up in a few separate pieces of dialogue, which I really like that. We also get plots that are unresolved, at least in these pages. I don't know if they will come up later in the run. I just want to mention them here. This Paladin, Black Knight, Wasp kind of love triangle. Paladin is kind of being hinted at being sinister in some fashion. Namor's lawsuit, which is spurned on by a cabal of high-ranking businessmen, that really goes nowhere as he leaves for Atlantis. and then he's just gone. There's a few other little things, but those are the two big ones to get a resolution on, which is fine. It's an ongoing comic. Overall, this is a classic Avengers story, and I can't help but think that if it had a better, maybe not better, but more classic Avengers lineup, it would be a lot more of a popular or well-regarded story. We don't get a lot of base siege stories with the Avengers, with them on the outside. It's a really nice change up to the formula, as well as excellently written, and the art was more than on par. I use this for Captain America Month because it really shows you his heart and soul as a member of the team he retroactively helped found. This is a story I would ask anyone who's an Avengers fan to give a chance on. You might be prickly about the team, but I think most of them will have grown on you by the end of it. Except for maybe the Black Knight. Well, that's the end of Captain America Month, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here for it, to talk about my favorite Avenger, one of my favorite superheroes of all time. I might do this every July. What do you folks think? Let me know down below. So please check out my new Patreon and my Instagram under Demon Peaks for daily Twin Peaks memes. Flop on over to the Dark Peaks podcast, which is my podcast, and of course coming next month, you're looking at the entirety of Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force. Thank you very, very much. This has been the Tony Micaiah, Master of Minds and Men, and goodbye.